Series 2 of the Football Fun Factory podcast. Who knew that we would get here? Episode 11. Really looking forward to having a chat with these guys, Luke Chadwick and Johnny Martin, talking about blue cards. Two different types of blue cards. The first of which being this very special one, a Football Fun Factory blue card. We'll explain what that is. And the second one being the proposed blue card sin bins that could be introduced to football. Johnny, tell us all about the Football Fun Factory blue card.
The Football Fun Factory blue card is something that we have implemented across our different programmes, our Football Fun and Development sessions and our Football Fun camps, where we look to reward fantastic human qualities and sporting behaviours. So when a child demonstrates fantastic teamwork, when a child demonstrates fantastic listening skills, they will be awarded with a blue card at the end of our session in front of the rest of the group.
And this is a blue card. It is just a piece of card. It's we order them as business cards, basically, that are printed on a flimsy piece of card. But to children, Luke, these are pretty special, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely fantastic. I think to be sort of recognised for doing something positive is always what children look for. Or adults, I'd be happy to win a blue card myself. But I think it always helps with the children when they're looking at not just about becoming a better football player, but about becoming a better human being as well. I think the blue card helps so much. Very different to the other blue card that we're talking about, where we're looking at sin bins in professional football. I'm not sure it sits right with me, but I'm sure we'll get stuck into that in more detail in James's court. It feels strange sat here and not with the in the judge's position.
It's all changed for Series 2. So yeah, two quite unique concepts. The Football Fun Factory blue card. Blue cards in football, not yellow or red. Let's put this on trial. So for those regular viewers or listeners to the Football Fun Factory podcast, this is the point at which normally Luke Chadwick gets dressed in a ridiculous judge's gown and wig, but this week it's me. I am Judge James and I will be ruling proceedings today. So I've got two envelopes and each of these has a conflicting view. This piece of hair keeps flapping over my face and it's really annoying. But what I'd love you two to do is open those up, have a little read of them. Give you a few seconds to do that. And I'll explain the concept of this next part of the podcast. What's going to happen is I've given Johnny and I've given Luke a conflicting view, one of which champions the blue card, the Football Fun Factory way, and one of which champions the blue card for sin bins in football. So let's see who's got what. What's going to happen is Luke's going to start first of all. Luke, you're going to read out your opening statement. And you're then going to have an opportunity, Johnny, to ask Luke some questions. So, Luke, what's on your card?
So on my card is the Football Fun Factory blue card is a brilliant way of educating children about what really matters in sport, developing life skills more than football skills. The sin bin idea for blue cards, on the other hand, is absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous, Luke says. A conflicting view from Johnny. Johnny, if you could read yours out.
Children need discipline, and the Football Fun Factory blue card is a silly idea. The blue card for a sin bin, however, is perfect for bringing more discipline into the game.
Wow, children need discipline. Strong words from Johnny Martin. First of all then, Johnny, Luke's really championing the blue card at Football Fun Factory. Obviously, you completely disagree with that. So your opportunity to grill Luke on the use of the blue card at the FFF is now.
What a silly idea, Luke. Care to elaborate why it's a good idea?
I think what you're saying is crazy, John. The blue card is obviously a brilliant idea. It helps children understand that it's not all about football skills, it's about developing life skills. Football is an amazing vehicle to support with every child, regardless of their ability level at a certain time, and to learn important life skills while playing the game, for me, is what football's all about.
Okay, I think that's fair enough. However, Luke, with regards to your opening statement, you mentioned that the sin bin idea is a bad idea. So you think it's good that adults and children can go up to a ref and abuse them and get away with it?
Not at all, but I think there's a system in place that's served quite well for the past 150 years in how the game's been policed and how the referees have acted. I think there needs to be more structure and more strict on the way that the referees are spoke to at times. And I think you look at the system in rugby where the sin bin system works quite well, but it's a completely different sport in terms of it's quite stop-start. I think in football to have the players coming on and off in a sin bin is not a great idea. The yellow and red cards are there in place for the referees to use, and probably a little bit more freely, in my opinion, for particularly dissent and bad language when the referees are getting criticised.
So you say, obviously, for the last 150 years, the red and yellow cards have been used to try and stamp out this abuse that the ref gets during a game, but it's not really worked, or it's not working, is it? And they're obviously looking to change something by introducing the blue card. So, as you say, it works so well in rugby. Why not football?
I think the difference in the sports where rugby, it's easier to get a player on and off. I think in football, a player...
Sorry to interrupt. Oh, God, look at your face. I'm so scared.
No interruptions.
You're going to let them speak to me like
Continue.
that? It's easier to get a player on and off because the game is so stop-start. If you watch a game of rugby, Johnny...
I play rugby, Luke. Look at me.
Even the physios come up.
That's a lie. Okay, we're going to end that one there. Johnny, just remind us of yours, and Luke, your opportunity to grill Johnny on his opening statement.
Yeah, so children need discipline, and the Football Fun Factory blue card is a silly idea. The blue card for a sin bin, however, is a perfect idea for bringing in more discipline into the game.
So when you say children need discipline, like what do you mean by that?
It's a fantastic question.
I think I disagree. I think it's a very silly question. Children need...
You cannot disagree with Judge James. That's not how this works.
Well, how does it work?
I will hold you in contempt of court, to coin a phrase from Sir Judge Chadwick.
I feel like I'm getting ganged up on here. So, children need discipline. They need to know when they've stepped out of line. They need to know and understand when they are right and wrong, and when their actions need consequence, aka the sin bin.
It sounds like you're completely contradicting yourself, because surely the blue card, the Football Fun Factory blue card, supports with that and helps with children learning positive life skills, which in turn creates better behaviour when they're at the football sessions and hopefully when they go home as well. So I just don't understand what you're saying. It's frustrating me.
When I got this card 6 minutes ago and saw it for the very first time, I knew that this was the perfect statement to argue. I just can't think as to why it was the perfect statement to argue now.
I'm ready to make my ruling. Thank you to everyone for presenting the questions. Thank you for the respect that there was within the court at the beginning of proceedings. Must remind people that within court that we shouldn't talk over one another, and we'll remind you of that for episode 12. On the balance of proceedings, I think it's clear and obvious that there is a winner. And the blue card shall be presented to a champion of the blue card and a champion of the Premier League.
Here we go.
None other than former judge of the Football Fun Factory podcast and new blue card winner, Luke Chadwick.
Thank you very much.
Well done, Luke.
Absolutely delighted with this.
Welcome back. It's now time to discuss what we actually think. Obviously, you guys were given an envelope and you had to present exactly what was in that envelope. But now it's time to explain what our thoughts are on, first of all, the Football Fun Factory blue card. So, Luke, you'll have dished out a few blue cards in your time to children when you were a head coach at Football Fun Factory. And it's a brilliant thing to be able to do, isn't it? Did it inspire the children that you coach?
100%. I mean, I was absolutely delighted when I opened my envelope and it was that opinion, because it was obviously easy to argue, but it was like a brilliant part of being a Football Fun Factory head coach is the end of the session when you're presenting the child or children that have showed the most fantastic human qualities during that session, and you can see the pride that they have when they win it, and when they go out to mum or dad who's waiting for them at the gates of the Astro, they're so happy. Mum and dad did as well, and it's such a rewarding feeling to be part of that, because it's so different to sort of giving an award, the man of the match or the girl of the match trophy at the end of a game because they've scored a certain amount of game. It is looking at football from a different angle, which, like I say, is so rewarding.
What do you think, John, in terms of then obviously we at Football Fun Factory we talk about life skills over football skills. Do you think, or have you seen, by handing out and presenting blue cards at our sessions, what kind of impact have you seen on the children?
Yeah, first and foremost, I was fuming to get the card that I got. I was devastated because it's so hard to argue against because it is class. Like my nephew actually went to a camp earlier on this week and won the blue card. My sister then was proud as
that must have been a fix, though.
Yeah, obviously it was set up. Yeah, I made sure it happened. But the fact that my sister, his mum, was beaming with pride as well, put it straight in our family chat and massive smile on his face as he's holding it. And he then did a little video and said why he won it. And it was for being really energetic and being really kind to others. Like, he now knows that those behaviours are rewarded and thought well of. So he's going to do those types of things more. And I think it just creates such a brilliant environment within our sessions. It really teaches the children what is important and encourages them to do more and more of those things. I think it's class. I think it's one of the best things we do at the FFF. I
agree. I think it's absolutely superb. I've heard stories of children that have slept with their blue card under their pillow and framed them and put them on the wall, and it is just a piece of card, but it means so much more than that, and it makes a great example of positive life skills, which is a different message for children, isn't it? It's not the child who's scoring the most goals. It's not the child who does the most tricks or skills in a game. It's the child that shows an amazing attitude.
And I think that's the one thing that we really try and promote within our sessions is we reward effort, we reward these life skills, and anyone can do that. You don't need to have a certain level of talent or ability to be able to score the most goals in a session. And that's where, like, the man of the match award or the girl of the match, as you said, could only be awarded to those that get loads of success and are the best players within the group, whereas this award and the blue card, it can be given to anyone. And I think it gives everyone within the group the opportunity to demonstrate those skills, to have that chance of success within the session. And I think that's another huge positive of it.
Brilliant. So let's go on to talk about the concept of a blue card with a sin bin to try and eradicate some disciplinary problems in football, I guess. Before we start to share opinions on whether it's a good or bad thing, because there's a conversation to be had there, and I'm sure there'll be some really interesting views. First of all, what problem do you think the football authorities are trying to solve?
I think it's that something in between a yellow and a red card. So it's for a slightly different thing. It's for dissent, a cynical foul. But in my mind, that should be rewarded with not rewarded, but the punishment should be a yellow or a red card. I think the introduction of something, I know that I played village football for a number of years with a sin bin. I know that you play it now, Johnny, where it is part of the game there, and it does, for me, disrupt the game a lot. There is, without doubt, too much dissent and that sort of thing at the lower levels of football. I say that, but even in the higher levels of football, but you've got players getting sin-binned every 5-10 minutes. I've seen the goalkeeper get sin-binned, struggling to get his top off to give it someone else. You end up being there an extra 40 minutes because there's been so many sin-bins going on. Yeah. For me, again, I know you didn't ask for my opinion, but for me, it's something that I don't see working if it is brought into professional football.
And what do you think the problems are, John? So obviously there's a solution presented, whether it's right or wrong, we'll talk about that in a bit, but what problems are we trying to solve?
Yeah, so from my understanding, I think it's mainly around the way that people speak to refs, isn't it, and their dissent, and I think there's a few other things like a cynical foul that maybe stops someone from scoring that isn't necessarily a red card offence, but does impact the game quite a lot. And sometimes there are a few times where they're running through a goal or someone pulls them back, stops the counter-attack, that then gets a yellow, and it does feel like it should be awarded a little bit more than that, but it's not a red card. So I assume it's to try and stamp out those types of things within the game.
So if you think back to your playing career, Luke, and you imagine that sin bins were in place, obviously they weren't, they just had yellow and red cards, and obviously 2 yellows make a red and somebody's sent off. In that circumstance then, a team is down to 10 players. the game can then swing, can't it, completely? It can be that one team's on top, they go down to 10 players and the game could go completely the other way. Of course, there's examples of the 10 men or women actually putting on a great show and grinding out a draw or whatever it might be. But if you imagine that the sin bin was in place, do you think it would have affected, 1, results, 2, potentially league titles, 3, the way in which the game sort of flowed for the crowd watching and for the players themselves?
Oh, 100%. And I think that's the problem where, like, we talk about doing it to improve what it's like for the referees so they're not getting so much dissent. But I think they'd be under so much more scrutiny, because by presenting a blue card and a player being off for 10 minutes would then change the state of the game. And I think the referees at the top level are under a huge amount of scrutiny anyway. We look at the VAR and that sort of thing when that has made mistakes in the past. And I think the blue card, because it would be open to the referee's interpretation of the cynical foul or the level of the dissent that they'd received, that it would make their life even harder having this blue card in place. And it does obviously make a huge difference to a game of football when one team's got more players than the other.
Yeah. So come on then, let's give an opinion. So blue card in football with sin bins, yes or no?
I don't like change. No, from me. I think the game isn't broken. I think there are some things, smaller changes or changes to what is currently in place that would suffice rather than introducing this whole new rules. I think if people, as you mentioned earlier on, Luke, the refs were stricter with the yellow cards, handing them out for dissent, then I think that would probably put a stop to players speaking so poorly to the referees and those types of things. I don't think it necessarily needs the whole new thing that's introduced.
Yes or no, Luke?
A no from me as well. I think in terms of what Johnny, I think there is without doubt too much dissent in the game. You see it on the TV on a Super Sunday, a Saturday night football, and that's where it filters down to the younger players and the lower levels of the game. So I think something more needs to be done. We all know football's a hugely emotional game and it's going to take a lot to change it. But for me, changing it with the blue card isn't the correct way to go about it.
Yeah, it's been a great discussion. And one thing that you said actually has made me think slightly differently. I'm very much in the no camp. I don't think it's a good intervention. I think there's other interventions, and we'll go on to speak about that in a second. If it's not blue cards, then what is it? But for me, it's then actually puts more scrutiny on the referee. We did a podcast recently about, people shouting at the ref, and is that okay? Is it all right to shout things from the sidelines? And they are human beings trying to officiate the game, and they will make mistakes. If then it comes into play, well, we've now got a yellow card, I've got everyone shouting at me, that's not a yellow card, ref, and now suddenly I've got a red card, now I've got a blue card as well. Doesn't that just complicate matters even further? Oh, that's not dissent, it is dissent, it is a cynical foul. What's a cynical foul? There's all those kind of questions. So if we're all in agreement, which I think we are, that the blue card is not a good intervention, and I think even now, since we put this topic in place a few weeks ago, I think even now that even the authorities have probably made that decision for themselves, probably because of quite a big backlash that's come out, mainly because people are saying, no, the blue card's a positive thing, a football fun factory.
That's
What's
the main
all
reason.
that about?
Yeah.
I think that then what needs to be done instead of blue cards? We know the problem we're trying to solve, dissent, bad sportsmanship in the game. We're trying to solve that problem. So what should we do instead? We've got tools at our disposal, yellow and red cards. Are those the tools that we need to implement, and how can we use those differently to make sure that we stamp those things out of the game?
Yeah, I think the referees have to be stricter on the way. I mean, fouls are always going to take place in football. They're going to be dealt with in that way. I think where it's so hard to interpret is what is too much dissent. You look, when I used to play and I watched back videos, mainly to watch myself play for them last 5 minutes of the game that someone's got on, but you look at the way the likes of Roy Keane used to speak to the referee and that sort of thing, and I think it's a culture that's ingrained in the game. I know everyone says it. You look at rugby, it's completely different. The level of respect that the players show to the referee is so different, but that game is a different culture as well. But we need to be teaching our children that are coming into the game that they have to be respectful of the opposition, they have to be respectful of the referee, and then sort of to swing it all back to the blue card at the football fun factory, that's certainly helping that, but there has to be something more, so everyone that's coming into the game, so in 30 years' time, it is a different environment for a referee, that they're being spoken to in a respectful manner, obviously with all due respect that it is in the heat of a battle.
Yeah, I think you think about the now and the future. So if we want our children in, say, 30 years, 10 years, 20 years' time to go into a different game, we want the game to evolve. We talk about how rugby is a great example of the respect for the referee. Don't know if we'll ever get there with football, but how can we get nearer, Johnny? What do you think?
I just think dish out more yellow cards.
Yeah.
Probably just make it really clear, abundantly clear. I mean, if in the Premier League there were 3 red cards this weekend for dissent, straight red cards for any dissent that came to the referees, next week there would be 2. The week after that there would be 1, and the week after that there'd be none. So I don't think we need to implement anything new. I think it's probably just be stricter with what's in place. I think it is really hard with things like fouls, as we know at the moment with VAR, and like it's not black and white. That's why the other video refereeing works so well in other sports like the tennis and cricket, because it is black and white. It's either in or out, and it's so difficult in football because it is up to opinion. But I think for some elements of what they're trying to implement the blue card for, I think it just needs to be stricter rules that we've currently got in place.
Again, I think that starts from the younger age. I think you couldn't do it at the top level straight away. If a player swore at the referee, then they get a red card. But I think where there is not anything on the game under 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, even under 18, that there should be a zero tolerance, because then people get into a habit of when they go into the professional game or whatever it may be, that they are more respectful in their language and the way they speak to the officials.
And who knows, if we get enough children playing football with the Football Fun Factory, it won't be a problem at all, because all these children are going to grow up and they're going to be going out onto the football pitch with bundles of enthusiasm, sportsmanship, fair play, and all the characteristics that we love to see in the game. We're going to go now to a new feature. A brand new feature of the Football Fun Factory podcast. We used to have some listeners' questions that people were sending in, but actually there's a very important opportunity that we need to grasp here, and that is to ask Chaddy some questions about his career, because we've got so many and we ask you them on a daily basis, Luke, but why not put those on the show on the Football Fun Factory podcast? So that's what we're going to do now.
I wasn't told anything about this. It's a massive surprise. I'm really looking forward to it.
You are going to love this section of the FFF podcast. It is quick fire questions for Super Lukey Chadwick. I've got one for you, Luke.
Go on.
What was it like playing in the Champions League?
What was it like playing in the Champions League? I didn't play a huge amount, and I think it's so hard when you're actually in it, you live in it, you're there, you probably don't appreciate it as much as you do when you get a little bit older, as I am now. Sort of looking back now, you sort of have to pinch yourself a little bit to think that I played in that. Probably the biggest game I ever played in the Champions League was coming on in the quarter-final against Bayern Munich at the Olympic Stadium in Munich, and you could feel how big the game was. You could feel the pressure, the tension, and to come on in that game was like the biggest game that I ever played in my career, which was absolutely brilliant at the time as a young player. So I can't, to play in the Champions League was unbelievable to do it, but probably didn't appreciate it then, because you just think, this is normal, this is the life that I'm living. So
nice. John, got a quick fire question for Chad?
If you could relive one match, what would it be and why?
Oh my God. Stumped me a little bit there. The one match that I'd relive and do whatever I wanted in the game.
Yeah.
Would be the playoff final, Cambridge United v Gateshead, to get promotion back to the Football League.
You would have scored the winner.
I would have scored a hat-trick. I would have come on. I still would have started on the bench, but I would have come on, and we were 2-0 down, and I come on and scored a perfect hat-trick, right foot, left foot, header, and I was the hero. Instead, I came on for half an hour, ran around like a headless chicken, but we went up, which was all that mattered. Good question, though.
Great question. Yeah, I need to up my game next week. Thanks for joining us for the Football Fun Factory podcast. Series 2 has got off to an absolute flyer, and we can't wait for the next episode.